Welcome back to another episode of The POW Factor. I'm your host, Jori Mundy, and today we get to delve into the world of public information management with a trailblazer in her field, Keonnis Taylor. Now, Keonnis brings a wealth of experience and knowledge as it relates to the aviation industry, crafting communication strategies, and fostering connections in that sphere. So join us as we delve into her journey, as we glean valuable lessons regarding crisis communication, media strategies, and effective storytelling. Keonnis, I'm so excited you are here. Thank you so much for joining us. And the first thing that we want to talk about is relating to the podcast in general, which is a focus on the power of women. And so, as we delve into that, I'm a girl's girl, and I know we know that from from the many years that we've known each other. So, when you think about a moment or experience in your journey, can you think about a time where you felt an undeniable sense of empowerment?
Yes, I can. And thank you, Joy. Just really want to thank you for inviting me here. You know that I'm so proud of the work that you have done and are doing. And you are such a shining example of the power of women. So thank you for inviting me and for asking this particular question. What comes to mind just automatically has to do with the pandemic. And many people don't know this, but many will remember that the ground zero, we'll call it, for the pandemic in the United States was the arrival of the Princess cruise ship at the port of Oakland and San Francisco in the Bay Area in 2020. And at that time, it was all over the news. The people on the cruise ship had to be quarantined on the ship. No one knew what the virus was. I don't think coronavirus was even a name that people knew at that time. But it was the introduction of the coronavirus into the United States. And what people, what most people don't know was that because um, of my role at that time, I literally was the individual who received every single media call for the Princess cruise ship, or about the Princess cruise ship being in Oakland at the port. I was the public information officer
Mm,
for the Port of Oakland's aviation
mm,
division, or the Oakland International Airport at that time. And being on call 24/7 as a PIO meant that as we were trying to figure out what was happening, the people were on the ship. There were buses and aircraft being deployed to fly and bus people to different Air Force bases across the country. And all of the news that was being reported on the Princess cruise ship and the fallout of what became the coronavirus and the
mm.
pandemic literally came to my cell phone. And that the first day I remember the first day getting the first phone call. And once it hit the news that the ship was docking in the Bay Area, my phone started ringing, and it was the Wall Street Journal and Al Jazeera and the New York Times and every news outlet literally in the world that was reporting on it was literally calling my cell phone. And I spent the next 26
Mm, mm,
hours answering my phone, returning messages from reporters, news directors, news desks, um, coordinating with our emergency operations center, just an incredible amount of work
mm,
at a time where people were really scared.
mm.
There was not a lot of information, there was a lot of pressure just to be
Mm.
responsive. And so it was it
So,
was a lot.
so
It was a
I'm
lot.
itching to ask this question. How are you feeling in this moment when your phone is blowing up with, all of the media outlets and it's all coming to you and it's dawned on you like, okay, this this is happening.
Well, in that moment, there wasn't a lot of feeling. It was just me doing my
Mm,
job.
just,
Um, as the airport spokeswoman and public information officer, it was my job to communicate with the media about anything that they wanted to know about that airport. And so the fact that there was such a big story happening, it wasn't necessarily new. We had, stories that made national news previously, and even international news. Um, but I don't think anyone really knew or understood the magnitude of what we were dealing
Mm,
with, obviously, because everything was literally unfolding by the moment.
mm,
I don't think anyone could have guessed
mm,
that it was literally becoming a global pandemic and that it started right here.
mm. As I think about you in that moment, and now all of the media outlets or the major media outlets are contacting you, they're wanting a response, and now it's dawned on you that wow, this is actually happening. How are you feeling in this moment? Because sometimes when we are in a crisis, there are so many different responses that we could take in terms of the nature of the situation. And so I'm curious to know, was it like, oh my goodness, this is happening? Or, okay, they're calling me, just jump on it, jump into what I know to do and respond in the way that I would normally respond in my confidence because I know kind of the role that I'm supposed to facilitate.
Sure, sure. So in that moment, there really wasn't a chance to feel
Mm,
anything. It was just
mm,
response. And as a spokeswoman, as a public information officer, I knew that it was my responsibility alone to ensure that the media and the public had the best and the most accurate information about what was happening
mm,
within my
mm,
organization. And so I just went into response
mm,
mode, if you
mm,
will, coordinating with our emergency operations center, and just making sure that the information that I was providing to the media was
mm,
timely, it was accurate, it was vetted.
mm,
And of course, we had no idea in that moment that we were literally dealing with the beginning of what
mm,
would
mm,
become a global pandemic. But for me in that moment, it was just doing the
mm,
job, making sure that every single news outlet that called received an answer, making sure that my speaking points were
mm,
developed
mm,
and clear, and that the public was getting the best information that I could provide.
mm. And it sounds like with you responding, defaulting to your own superpower, right? Of knowing in that moment when this crisis is happening, that you have developed yourself to an exceptional stature to be able to respond and do the job to the greatest ability that you have. And so I want to mention that because I know, as we're talking to the audience and just women that are in those situations where they feel like, what if this happens in my role, or there's a crisis that happens? How do you respond, and how do you stay calm in that? And I feel like it's an unshakable power and confidence and self to say, you can handle any situation that comes. You just default to what you know to be true, which is that you're exceptional in what you've cultivated in yourself, and specifically for the responsibilities that you have. So that's incredible. I don't know. Let me just be candid. I don't know if I would want to be on the other end of those calls, Keonnis, at that point in time. So that's especially on the cusp of it becoming a global pandemic. I can't imagine. So well, first, kudos to you, because that's that I can imagine what that was like.
Oh, thank you, Joy. People often say in public affairs or in PR that PR is a thankless job,
Mhm.
and that the way that you know in PR that you've done a good
Mhm.
job is that no one knows that you've done anything.
Mm.
And I think that that was the situation
Mm.
here,
Mhm.
because everyone knows about the pandemic.
Mhm.
Everyone knows that one of the first ways that it was introduced into our country was on this cruise
Mm.
ship.
Mhm.
People know that it came to the Bay Area, that it docked in San Francisco. Um, they couldn't let off their passengers in San Francisco, and so it was stuck in the bay until it was it was unloaded in Oakland.
Mm.
But people don't know that the information that's transmitted goes through, or it went through in
Mm.
that case, one individual.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And as I go a little bit deeper into you talked about your experience in aviation, and I'm thinking just from a woman's perspective in the industry, what unique perspectives or qualities do you believe women bring to leadership roles? And how do you think these have contributed to your success in your career, specifically as a PIO in aviation and being able to respond to those crisis situations with crisis communication strategies?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think it's important to think about and to talk about the unique qualities that women bring to leadership roles, because I think that they can be very
Mm,
nuanced,
mm,
and they can be things that are needed, not just for the other
mhm,
women
mhm,
working underneath
mhm,
them, but also for everyone working underneath them. I've had mentors and others, directors, etc., people that I've on whose teams that I've
mhm,
worked, who were men and
mhm,
women,
mhm,
and everyone has their own unique
mhm,
perspective. But I can say, as a woman, it has been very valuable for me to be able to identify women in leadership who can provide insight about their paths, who can understand what I may be going through as a
mm,
woman, who can empathize with the challenges that may be specific to women.
mm,
So I definitely think that the soft
mm,
skills that many women bring to the table are part of women's
mm,
superpowers when it comes to leadership.
mm.
Of course, in addition to our hard skills, because those never fail either.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked about mentorship. And so I want to pivot and I want to delve a bit deeper in there because as we know, mentorship is crucial and critical for the evolution of professional development and personal development. So has there been a mentorship experience that you have had that has been significant that's contributed to your successful career?
Absolutely. And I'm so happy that we've done this pivot because mentorship is something that I am a huge
Mm,
proponent
mm,
of. My graduate
mm,
education was through the National Urban Fellows
mm,
program. And the National Urban Fellows is a master's granting fellowship that in public affairs that involves a 9-month mentorship
mm,
component. So each fellow during the course of education spends 9 months with a mentor,
mm,
and having that leadership, that guidance, that
mm,
advocacy, that ability to engage and plug into network, it's
mm,
invaluable as an emerging leader. And mentorship for me is something that I will always
mm,
um, seek,
mm.
and it's also something that I feel is important to offer.
Mm, good deal. And when you went through that program and you had that experience and you really learned from, your mentor, was there certain things about or aspects from that mentorship that you felt like really resonated when you stepped out of that program and that contributed to you it maybe in your role as PIO or just in general you say you know what this nugget or this experience that they shared with me has really stuck with me and I drew on that when I was in this specific role because it helped me on a night where I was dealing with all of the calls from the pre-pandemic that was happening or just encountering a situation and being able to pull from that experience.
Definitely. I will say that just the idea of mentorship
Mm, mm,
um, was such a force
mm,
in my
mm,
education that having the ability to plug into
mm,
it is really what set the foundation for my career after I graduated.
mm,
And while my specific education or even my mentor at that time wasn't specific to public relations, and it wasn't specific to aviation or
Mm,
transportation. There were elements
mm,
of those
mm,
things that I was able to be exposed to. So it absolutely played the role of serving as a foundation for my career, and it's only added to it since
mm.
then.
Thank you for that. And I know you've also, I know the focus too, just in your experience and just your expertise has been on communicating and facilitating and coordination, and so effective internal communication is vital for smooth operation of any organization. So how have you ensured clear and consistent communication just within the team and across departments at the airport?
Well, that's a great question. And I actually have done this at two
Mm,
airports. Um, I, in addition to being the spokesperson, so the public facing media
mhm,
liaison, have also been responsible for internal communications
mm,
at the same time.
mhm,
And so while the information that I'm giving to media um, also gets to the
mhm,
staff and the internal stakeholders in the organization, there's also information that you want to go just to the team.
mm,
And so one tool that I've used to help make that happen is creating an internal newsletter.
mm,
Um, I did it at both airports and would send it out weekly on a Friday. I think I called it the Friday flyby,
mm,
and it was just a summary of what happened during that week,
mm,
what was in the news, what happened at the airport, what opportunities were available, just things that I thought would be engaging for the people working in that organization, not only for their
mm,
interest and information, but also for their engagement, because I do believe that the employees of an organization are the best ambassadors.
mm,
And so to provide them with visibility, with support, and with information is the best way to promote public relations for the
mm.
organization.
I love that. And tell me again what you called it, the newsletter flyby.
Oh, the Friday
Friday
flyby.
flyby. That's catchy. I love that. Uh, going into uh, more of the realm for women as we talk about just the industry, the aviation industry. So, I'd imagine women face unique challenges as it relates to advancement or maybe different barriers. Can you share any strategies or any type of approach that you found to be effective overcoming some of those challenges as you've continued to advance in your career?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I think that this is such an important question, um, because we don't often get to really address the challenges. Where as women, we're taught to smile
Mm-hmm.
and, grin and bear it and just work through it, or to keep our heads down and, just do the work. And I'm here to tell you that that doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you just put your head down and do the work, or even when you're smiling, there can be challenges that still come your way. So I would just say that in order to continue to move forward, you really just have to remain rooted in your faith,
Mm-hmm.
seek mentorship, align with people who are adept at understanding the ins and outs of the organization, and then understanding that even within an organizational structure, there may be, we'll call them politics, that aren't necessarily clear on the surface. But one thing I learned very early on in my career was that even if a person, quote unquote, doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
politics, um, there are politics everywhere.
Yeah.
and and just understanding what that
Mhm.
means, and understanding that you are literally playing in a game that exists around you, whether you understand it, know it, believe it, like it or not. So I think that understanding what that means in your organization, aligning with mentors within the organization and even outside of the organization who are respected and reputable and who know how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the things that we need to hear, but don't necessarily always learn.
Yeah, I love that you brought up politics. I feel like that is that is the underworld sometimes, and it very much does exist. And I feel like for our listeners and for those that maybe feel that there is some type of resistance on, well, this is politics and I'm not going to get involved. I love what you said about you're in the game whether you like it or not. And that is that's something that I think as women and just anyone who is wanting to seek to elevate to recognize and be aware that that is something that is very apparent. And so it's kind of either you learn to play the game, or like I say, or let the game play you.
That's
Because
true.
sometimes you without understanding those dynamics, it can cause an hindrance in advancement because of that. Because of just either resisting it or if you're seeking mentorship to really understand how to navigate in that sphere so that you can advance in your career. So I love that you said that because I think that is something that goes unspoken, a lot of the times, which, of course, it just exists, but really recognizing the way that you can arm yourself is by helping to understand the different intricacies in the organization and seek out that mentorship from those individuals that really have a good hand and can give you insight into how to navigate those types of scenarios. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because I definitely think that is warranted and something that
Oh,
we should,
sure.
yeah, we
Absolutely.
should talk about more. So looking ahead, as we look at the next generation of leaders, of women that want to advance in their career, what advice would you offer them if it was one tip that you can leave them with to say, you know what, do this one thing to advance your career based on your career success and your experience, your expertise, and what you've had and cultivated in your own journey?
Sure. I think this goes along with the idea of securing mentorship.
Mm,
But I would say becoming involved in professional organizations.
mm,
Again, that allows an opportunity to one, find mentors,
mhm,
but to also establish rapport and create credibility within your
mm,
industry. So I think that if you have a professional organization for whatever your field of work is, attending a
mm,
meeting or going to
mm,
conferences, those are the ways that you meet people who could lead you to your next
mhm,
opportunity, um, or help you figure out a problem that you're having in your organization now.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
definitely just plugging in and not putting your head
Yeah,
down.
I resonate so much with that. I feel like throughout the course of my journey, that is where I found much success is really seeking out those organizations that I resonate with and being able to build relationships just organically with people who are like-minded and that can pour into you and give you insight and can cultivate connections that could lead you to wherever you're trying to go in your journey. But it is something that requires intentionality, and that's what I'm hearing you say is making sure to use
Absolutely.
that to your advantage.
Absolutely.
All right, and so my last question is just reflecting on your journey, and I love that you talked about the pandemic and your major part in that, right? To have that responsibility to be able to respond to various networks and just being that point person, and of course being in public affairs and your coaching and all of the things that you've done just as the powerhouse you are. What legacy do you hope to leave behind just as a leader and advocating for women's empowerment and just being a being a connector and influence just through your legacy?
Thank you. Thank you for that
Mhm.
question, Jory. I would say, if anything, I want to be remembered as someone who was not afraid to be first in line.
Mm,
I was the first African American female spokesperson for not one, but
mm,
two major international
mm,
airports. And while I thought that that would, get me hoisted on
mm,
shoulders and, different things like that, um, the unfortunate reality is that, that was not that was not the case. And just doing the work that you know how to do and that you are good at, sometimes that just has to be the focus.
mm,
Um, People won't necessarily always support when you feel that things that you're doing should be supported. You may not get the applause
mm,
or things that might feel that you would give to someone
mm,
else in that position. But just being someone who continues to push
mm,
forward, who is not afraid um, to do the work and be the example.
mm,
I did often say that part of my reason for doing the work that I did was so that other little Black
mm,
girls could turn on their
mm,
TV and see a dark
mm,
skinned Black woman with
mm,
locks or with a
mm.
fro, depending on the day, on
Yeah.
television, representing a major
Mm,
organization. And so while it was not always easy, I know that my representation or what I represented in those
mm,
roles was much larger than
mm,
myself, and I only hope that my daughter, for
mm,
one, is inspired by that. I know that she is, by the things that she tells
mm,
me, but that other young girls and people in general will be. Um,
mm,
Inspired to go for things and to do things that someone maybe has told them wasn't for
mm,
people like
mm.
them.
I am so inspired by that to hear that story. That that is it is truly impactful, truly powerful, and it showcases the importance of representation and not allowing fear to prevent you from stepping into what may be something that is paramount and that can cause a ripple effect for those that are coming behind. Now, I know I said I had one last question, but now I have another question. You talked about support, and I feel like I want to just delve into that just a bit to say, let's say in the scenario when you are the first, or if you're just a woman and it could be a male dominated industry, it could be a woman showing up in a specific position that may be the first at doing that one thing, and maybe they're encountering situations where they're not feeling supported. What might you share in terms of how to manage that? Maybe if you're feeling like you don't have that support or feeling like you're alone in that stride, but knowing that that you have the responsibility to take on that position to change the trajectory of what it will what the outcome will be once you have fulfilled your tenure in it.
Sure. Just, I think, rooting oneself in faith,
Mm,
knowing that uh, the path that you're on is
mm,
guided. I think that has been something that has really helped
mm,
me. I have certainly encountered situations where I felt that the support would be greater
mm, mm,
than what I
mhm,
experienced. And I've encountered situations that have felt isolating.
mhm,
People say it's lonely at the top, for example. but also there are, there can be situations where you may be the only woman or the only person of
Right.
color, or the only both.
Yeah.
And so, just showing up, knowing that you know your
Mm,
stuff, knowing that you are there for a reason and not by
mm,
accident, and just carrying the confidence with you, without absorbing any um, of other people's
mm, mm,
feelings or their
mm,
projections. I literally, at one stage earlier in my
mm,
career, I was a very new mother. I think it was my
mm,
first role, coming off of,
mm,
maternity,
mm,
after giving
mm,
birth. And I was um, the only African
mm,
American
mm,
woman, one of very few women, working on an engineering construction
mm,
office
mm,
for a major, like, $1 billion capital
mm,
project. And it was not all, it didn't always feel welcoming. I had people make comments,
mm,
really dismissive or offensive comments.
mm,
Um, Most of my coworkers were, you know, middle-aged and
mm,
older, male engineers.
mm,
Pretty much everyone in the office
mm,
was, and it really helped me to visualize. So I think things like positive self-talk
mm,
are very important, and just caring for your spirit when you are doing the work that you're doing to care for yourself.
mm,
um, so what I mean by visualize is that I would literally just visualize my protective bubble around
mm,
me. So any of those, snide remarks or the kind of weird looks or just any of the things that might make me
mm,
feel like I was less than what I knew that I
mm,
was, I would literally imagine them bouncing right off of this little protective barrier that was around me. And that helped me so much.
mm.
But it's just a little trick for me that worked, and I like to share that with people.
Yeah, I love that because I can't imagine how many women, and specifically women who want to advance their careers, may be dealing with snide remarks or, they're having their competency questioned if they're in a position or role, or, just the effectiveness and all of those things that could come, and having an unshakable confidence because you have something that you've created to protect yourself and to continue to thrive. And that, I'm getting goosebumps because I think that is, I have heard throughout our time and our conversation, that the power is within you. The power is within you, and default to the confidence of you, default to your skills and your knowledge, and being able to rise to the occasion and do what you have to do in order to protect yourself so that you can continue to thrive.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Keonnis, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining us.
Joy.
This was
Thank
incredible.
you.
I am in awe. I mean, I feel like I said, but I really am, because I truly believe that just what you've shared is so impactful, and it's things that are happening. That are happening daily with women that want to advance their careers, and recognizing the things that we can use and the strategies, and just knowing that we are enough. We are enough in what we are, and can contribute vastly to responding prior to a pandemic that's happening where you're getting blown up. I'm taking my hat off to you, man, because that's a feat. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Joy. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I so appreciate this invitation, the opportunity to engage with you here. So, best to you always.
Thank you. I gained so much insight from that conversation just about storytelling and effective communication. I hope you were able to pull some nuggets from this conversation. And until next time, remember to embrace your POW factor and keep shining as the powerhouse women that you are. I'm Jori Mundy. Remember to stay inspired, stay empowered, and keep leading with purpose.